clear and warm. I've been at home, worked in my garden some, spent some time seeking my turkeys, and lit some.
Martha and Ephraim Ballard moved from Massachusetts to the frontier of Maine during the American Revolution. When the diary opens, Martha is 50 years old and has 5 children still living at home, ranging in ages from 7 to 31.
Cyrus carried 1 bushel of wheat and 1 Indian meal to Mr. Carr. I've been doubling and twisting thread and the girls washed. Clear and hot. I was at home all day collecting herbs. Hannah ironed and Parthenia spun cotton.
Parthenia is Martha's niece, Parthenia Barton, who lives with the family for a number of years and becomes almost a daughter.
Born in Oxford, Massachusetts in 1735, Martha Moore Ballard grew up in the smallish New England town among multiple siblings. Her knowledge of midwifery and domestic responsibilities she obtained from her aunts, sisters, and mother, Dorothy Moore. Historians know very little about Martha's early life, so the most clarified and therefore the most important section of her life begins with her marriage to Ephraim Ballard in 1754. In 1777, she and her family moved to Hallowell, Maine, as the family continually grew. By 1779, Martha had 9 children, 3 of whom died from diphtheria. Martha began practicing midwifery the year after she arrived in Hallowell. Laurel Ulrich attempts to describe the extent to which an 18th century New England midwife economically and medically contributed to her adopted community while expounding on traditionalism, gender roles, and other aspects of life in Hallowell. Ulrich presents herself as a pioneer in history scholarship. Throughout A Midwife's Tale, she emphasizes the deficiency of research into women's issues and the lack of primary documentation useful in determining the activities of female members of colonial society. The simplistic terminology prevalent in the work expresses a desire to reach a relatively wide audience. The more than superficial analyses of Martha's activities shrink the target audience to those seeking something more than general knowledge of the period. Ulrich utilizes the typical essay method to organize her work to develop her argument clearly and effectively. She makes claims or conjectures and supports the assertions with evidence derived from primary and secondary historical documentation. She often uses those sources to dedicate a whole chapter to describing the significance of one event. Ulrich mainly uses reliable works from Martha's time to express different viewpoints on medical practices and significant events, such as the Purrington murders, to allow the reader to draw their own conclusions about social or economic conditions in Hallowell. Ulrich inserts a transcription of the original entries from Martha's diary before providing her own opinion of Martha's words. Ulrich puts forth an interesting theory concerning the economic dealings of the people of Hallowell. She provides evidence that Martha, like other women in her community, integrated contribution to a proto-industrialization local economy into regular wifely duties. Ulrich documents numerous exchanges of material woven by Martha and her helpers for practical goods or money as proof of a woman-powered textile economy. One such exchange occurred on September 9, 1788, between Martha and Mrs. Savage, who lived nearby. Mrs. Savage paid 6 shillings, or $43, for a few yards of linen, medicine for her son, and 7 yards of diaper cloth made by one of Martha's girls. Martha later goes on to document in her diary more than 40 dyeings, material weavings, and thread sellings, for which she received considerable payment in the form of sundries or hard currency. Several of Martha's female neighbors even paid her with textiles. Martha recorded about 58 instances in which her neighbors paid for her midwifery services in cloth or yards of ribbon. Considering a scant number of these women worked as tailors, the reader can infer that the women of Hallowell, and perhaps women in other parts of Massachusetts, used woven material as an important bartering tool. By including Martha's many accounts of weaving, pulling flax for spinning, and trading with cloth, Ulrich shows that Martha contributed her fair share to the local economy by churning out fabrics. This theory makes the most sense when compared to what Massachusetts society expected of its females. Weaving, like cooking and cleaning, was considered women's work and a necessary part of family life in the colonial era. From the chore came everything from quilts to dresses to stockings. Each household would need a constant supply of material to fashion new items, and the most time-saving way to procure material would be to purchase it from a female neighbor who, as a wife, would most likely have spun cloth. Ulrich also presents the many duties Martha carried out as a midwife and shows Martha's dedication to her vocation by describing the hundreds of medical procedures in which she participated and the difficulties surrounding them. Ulrich's inclusion of Martha's accounts of staying up long nights with sick patients or waiting days for her charge's labor pains to become regular seem placed to evoke a sense of admiration from the reader. Using sympathetic and admiring language and excerpts from Martha's diary, Ulrich shows that Martha not only acted as an obstetrician, but also acted as nurse, apothecarist, and surgeon. Ulrich includes excerpts from several medical guides meant to justify Martha's use of remedies modern readers may deem strange. Ulrich avoids mentioning the medical futility of using such techniques as, for example, applying medicines meant to balance the humors, perhaps to leave the nobility of Martha's efforts unsullied in the reader's mind. As Puritans, the people of Hallowell relied on beliefs taken from their church's teachings to regulate their community. Many long-held laws originated from biblical canon. To show the effect church doctrine had on interpersonal relations, Ulrich cites a particular event that temporarily disrupted the Congregational Church in Hallowell, the ordination of Reverend Isaac Foster. With Foster's appointment in October 1786 came a firestorm of criticism from the town secretary, Henry Sewell, and his disciples who believed Foster's teachings heretical and unbecoming of a clergyman of the Congregational Church. Multiple conflicts with the Reverend led to Foster's dismissal a little while later. Ulrich obtains Mr. Sewell's opposition to Foster's liberal doctrines and events surrounding the period of protest from Sewell's diary. The reader insinuates that Martha's relative silence on the matter demonstrates her disinterest in church doctrine and possible liberalism by accepting Foster's teaching. The conflict not only reveals the complexities of Puritan beliefs, but also shows Hallowell's resistance to radical change. Since Ulrich occasionally uses Sewell's diary for a male perspective on certain happenings, she unwittingly proves a supposition confirmed by many historical findings. By comparing journal entries made by Martha and Sewell for opinions on important events of the period, she attracts the reader's attention to the obvious contrasts in spelling and grammar. Sewell rarely misspells a word in his diary, while Martha makes very frequent grammatical errors. This contrast highlights a division between genders in reference to how each was expected to spend their time. Men were educated to become influential leaders in their community, and women were expected to keep house and care for their children. Ulrich describes the division of labor in the home to add an extra measure of esteem to the difficult tasks of colonial women. She enumerates a long list of activities that the women of Hallowell, who also held down outside jobs, completed in the course of a day, and restricts analyzing the activities of male family members to what Martha might have thought of them. Many times Martha describes weaving, cooking, washing, birthing, cleaning, tending, buying, and selling in the course of 2 or 3 days, while Ephraim may pay a call to his councilman colleagues or go surveying. This shows that the focus of Ulrich's work is on the extraordinary women of Hallowell because Ulrich relies mainly on Martha's point of view. Although Ulrich rarely mentions events caused specifically by religiosity, she certainly includes the influences of traditionalism on society by providing the ways in which the people of Hallowell and its officials dealt with problems concerning morality. One such problem was the increased number of children born out of wedlock. By including examples of legislation passed by the Kennebec County courts and Martha's clipped language concerning such scandal, Ulrich makes it clear that although Hallowell's people and judicial body made allowances for such human errors, they preferred moral uprightness and adherence to typical social mores. Considering the work received the Pulitzer Prize and the Bancroft Prize for Analytical Excellence, one can assume that many historians believed A Midwife's Tale a valuable contribution to American literature. The New York Times even added it to their new and noteworthy list back in 1991. A Midwife's Tale provides thorough and reliable information concerning life in colonial Massachusetts. Its contents would most aid one researching daily life and the importance of gender roles in 1700s New England.
Suddenly, her midwifery practice picks up again. She's back on her horse, out in the middle of the night. In fact, in the last 4 months of the diary, she delivers almost as many babies as she did at the beginning. And then, at the end of April, 1812, she came home from a delivery, exhausted and ill. She didn't want to get out of bed for several days. She just seemed to sink down.
May 7, 1812. Clare the most of the day and very cold and windy. Dafter Ballard and a number of her children here. Mrs. Partridge and Smith also. Reverend Tappan came and conversed sweetly. Made a prayer adapted to my case.
And then the diary just stops.